The galaxy was filled with whispers. The Galactic Empire, known for its immense power and ruthlessness, had sent its deadliest weapon to Earth, its assassins. These assassins were not like any ordinary soldiers, trained in the most brutal and secretive ways. They were masters of stealth, combat, and death. Their reputation had spread across countless worlds, striking fear into the hearts of even the most powerful races. And now, Earth would face them. The reason for this dark mission was simple. Earth, a small and seemingly insignificant planet in the vast galaxy, had somehow caught the attention of the Empire. Rumors had begun to circulate that the humans had discovered something powerful, something that could change the balance of power. The Empire could not allow such a threat to exist. Earth had to be silenced, and there was only one way to do that: send the assassins. But as the assassins readied themselves for the mission, a strange feeling began to spread among them. They had faced countless enemies in the past, but the reports coming from Earth were unlike anything they had encountered before. Something about this mission didn't feel right. They couldn't shake the feeling that this time, they might be the ones caught off guard. The leader of the assassins, a tall, imposing figure named Kurax, stood on the bridge of the massive warship as it approached Earth. His cold, piercing eyes scanned the planet below. Kurax was a veteran of many battles, a master in the art of assassination. He had killed without hesitation and left no trace behind. Earth would be no different. "We will show them the true power of the Empire," Kurax muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. His voice was deep and filled with authority. The ship's crew moved swiftly around him, preparing for the mission. The assassins would be dropped onto Earth under the cover of darkness. Their target was unknown, but they were trained to adapt to any situation. Nothing could stop them. As the ship neared Earth's atmosphere, the tension was palpable. The assassins, cloaked in black armor, stood silently in the shadows, waiting for the order to strike. They were the perfect killing machines, silent, efficient, and merciless. But Kurax's thoughts were elsewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There had been whispers among the Empire's higher-ups about a new kind of human, something different from the others. Kurax had dismissed these rumors as nothing more than superstition. Humans were weak, primitive beings. No matter how advanced their technology became, they would always be limited by their physical bodies. Yet, as the assassins prepared to land, Kurax couldn't ignore the unease that gnawed at him. What if these rumors were true? What if Earth was hiding something? Something more dangerous than they realized. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere with a sudden jolt, and the crew quickly got to work. The assassins were ready. They had been briefed on their objective: eliminate all resistance, neutralize any potential threats, and make sure Earth's power was extinguished before it could spread. As the ship touched down on the outskirts of a dense forest, the assassins moved quickly into position. The world below was quiet, almost unnervingly so. There was no sign of life, no sign of resistance. Everything appeared peaceful, which made Kurax's unease grow. "Stay sharp," Kurax ordered, his voice low and controlled. "This mission is more important than any we've had before. The Empire demands nothing less than total success." The assassins nodded, their eyes scanning the surroundings, their weapons ready. They moved like shadows, blending into the environment, leaving no trace behind. They knew what they had to do. But as they ventured deeper into the forest, the silence began to feel heavier. The trees seemed to close in around them, the stillness too perfect, too unnatural. There was something about this place that felt wrong. Then, out of nowhere, a sound broke the silence. A twig snapped. The assassins froze. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to send a chill down their spines, a slight rustle in the distance. Kurax's eyes narrowed, his instincts kicking in. He motioned for the team to halt, his senses alert. Something was watching them. But where? The silence returned, only this time. It was more oppressive, more suffocating. The wind seemed to die down, and the world around them grew eerily still. Did anyone else hear that? One of the assassins whispered, his voice barely audible. Kurax didn't answer immediately. He simply motioned for them to move forward, his hand tightening around the hilt of his weapon. The feeling of being watched was growing stronger, and his unease deepened. The mission had just begun, but already it didn't feel like it was going to go as planned. Little did Kurax and his team know they were about to face a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered before. And the hero they were about to meet would change everything. This wasn't going to be just another simple assassination mission. Earth had something far more powerful in store for them. In the darkness of the forest, the shadow of a figure moved silently through the trees, its presence almost undetectable. A ninja. And this ninja wasn't going to let the Empire's assassins have their way. As the assassins continued their search, they unknowingly walked deeper into a trap. And soon, they would learn the hard way that Earth wasn't as defenseless as they thought. Kurax tightened his grip on his weapon. The tension in the air was unbearable. Something was coming. He could feel it. And when it did, it would strike with the force of a storm. The stage was set. The first strict the assassins moved deeper into the forest, their movements calculated and deliberate. The trees seemed to close in around them, casting long shadows in the fading light. The eerie stillness of the forest weighed heavily on the team, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger with every step. Kurax's senses were on edge, but he maintained his usual calm demeanor. He had been through countless missions, and this would be no different, or so he thought. Suddenly, a blur of movement darted from the shadows. It was so fast, Kurax almost didn't see it. He only heard the faintest sound, a whisper of air. Before he could react, one of his assassins dropped to the ground with a heavy thud. His neck had been severed cleanly, the wound so precise it almost didn't seem real. The assassin's body lay motionless, blood pooling around him, staining the forest floor. Kurax's eyes narrowed. He signaled for the group to take cover behind the trees. "Stay low, stay silent," he commanded, his voice barely a whisper. The assassins followed orders, instinctively blending into the shadows, weapons drawn. But there was no sign of the attacker. No footsteps, no sound, just the chilling silence of the forest. Kurax's mind raced. He had never encountered a foe that could move like this, so quickly, so silently. He'd trained for years to deal with every possible enemy, but this was different. This wasn't just another assassin. This was something else. His grip on his weapon tightened as he scanned the forest. "Find them," he barked, his voice low but commanding. "They are here. I know it." The team fanned out, each assassin moving with precision, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. But there was no trace of their attacker. No footprints, no disturbances in the foliage. Nothing. Another assassin, a woman with sharp, calculating eyes, raised her hand to signal. She had spotted something, a small flicker of movement in the distance, but before Kurax could give the order to advance, it happened again. Another assassin fell, his body collapsing without a sound, a sharp knife embedded in his throat. Blood poured from the wound, but the forest remained eerily silent. No one heard the strike. "Damn it," Kurax cursed under his breath. His mind raced as he tried to calculate the enemy's next move. Whoever they were too fast, too skilled. The assassins of the Galactic Empire had never been outclassed like this. "Spread out. Form a circle," Kurax commanded. "We can't let them pick us off one by one." The remaining assassins obeyed, their movements synchronized as they formed a tight circle, weapons aimed outward. They were trained for this, trained for ambushes, for situations where the odds were stacked against them. But even they could feel the growing tension. The forest had become a trap, and they were the prey. Seconds passed like hours. The air grew thick with anticipation. Kurax's heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to show any fear. He was a leader, one of the Empire's finest, and he would not let this mission fail. Then, without warning, the air around them seemed to shift. A breeze, so light it was almost imperceptible, brushed against Kurax's face. He froze. His instincts screamed at him to move, to react. But it was already too late. From the darkness, a figure emerged. A blur, faster than the eye could follow. It was a man, or rather, a shadow of a man. He was dressed in black, his movements flowing like water, his body a perfect blend of grace and deadly precision. His eyes were obscured by a dark mask, but there was no mistaking the deadly aura that surrounded him. Before Kurax could give an order, the ninja struck. In a flash, the first assassin was taken down. The ninja moved with lightning speed, his blade a blur as it cut through the air. The second assassin fell next, his body crumpling to the ground before he even had a chance to react. Kurax's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary warrior. This was something else, something far more dangerous than anything he had ever faced. The ninja moved like a ghost, appearing and disappearing in the shadows. No sound, no warning, just death. One by one, the assassins were picked off, their bodies silently falling to the forest floor. Kurax stood frozen, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend what was happening. Who was this man? How was he doing this? And why was he attacking the Empire's finest? His thoughts were interrupted as the ninja appeared directly in front of him. Kurax's eyes widened as the figure raised his blade, the moonlight glinting off the sharp edge. Kurax reached for his weapon, but before he could draw it, the ninja moved again. In a blur, the ninja closed the distance between them, his blade slashing through the air. Kurax barely managed to block the strike, his own weapon meeting the ninja's with a sharp clash of metal. The force of the blow sent a shock through Kurax's body, but he quickly regained his footing. The ninja's eyes locked onto Kurax's, and for the first time in his life, Kurax felt fear. This was no ordinary fight. This was something beyond his understanding, something primal. "You think you can defeat me?" Kurax spat, his voice filled with rage and disbelief. "I am Kurax, the greatest assassin of the Galactic Empire." The ninja said nothing. His face remained cold and expressionless as he adjusted his stance, preparing for the next strike. The fight had only just begun. The forest seemed to close in around Kurax as he faced the ninja. His heart pounded in his chest, the adrenaline surging through his veins. The first few strikes had been a blur, just a series of clashes and parries that left him breathless, struggling to keep up with the ninja's unnatural speed. Kurax had fought hundreds of enemies, but none like this. His opponent moved as if the very shadows were part of him, bending and flowing with an eerie fluidity that made it almost impossible to predict his next move. It was as though the ninja wasn't just human. He was something more. Kurax's grip tightened around his weapon. He had to focus. He had to end this quickly. The Empire was counting on him. But as the ninja closed in again, Kurax's thoughts flickered to his fallen comrades. One by one, they had been taken out. No warning, no sound, just death. The ninja was faster than any assassin Kurax had ever faced, and he was picking them off like they were nothing more than mere distractions. This was no ordinary mission. This was something far more dangerous. The ninja moved with the precision of a storm, calm, quiet, but destructive. He was a blur of motion, his blade flashing in the dim moonlight. Kurax managed to block another strike, but the force sent him stumbling back. His mind raced, trying to find an opening, a weakness, anything that could give him an advantage. He was skilled. He had trained for this, but nothing in his extensive training had prepared him for an opponent like this. He had underestimated this warrior, and now it was costing him everything. The ninja didn't speak, his face obscured behind the mask, his eyes cold and calculating. He was like a ghost, his movements almost imperceptible, blending perfectly with the shadows of the forest. For a moment, Kurax questioned whether he was even facing a human at all. "Who are you?" Kurax spat, trying to throw his opponent off balance with a question. "Why are you doing this?" The ninja didn't answer. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. With every strike, every movement, Karax felt himself losing ground. There was no escape, no place to hide. The ninja had taken control of the battlefield, and Karax was no longer in command. This was a fight unlike any other. Karax swung his weapon with all his strength, hoping to land a blow that would force the ninja into a defensive stance. But the ninja was already gone, disappearing into the darkness like a shadow. Before Karax could process what had just happened, the ninja reappeared right behind him. The air shifted in an instant, and Karax barely had time to react before the blade was at his throat. His breath caught in his throat. His pulse raced. But the ninja didn't strike. He didn't kill him. Instead, the ninja stepped back, allowing Karax to turn and face him. Karax's mind raced as he tried to make sense of this. Was this a game? A test? Or was this some form of twisted mercy? Karax's muscles screamed in pain from the exertion. His body was growing tired. His mind was clouded with confusion. He had fought for so long, but now he was running on fumes. He couldn't keep this up much longer. The ninja tilted his head slightly, as if studying him. Karax was a skilled fighter, but this ninja, this shadow, was something else entirely. He moved with the grace of a predator, his every action deliberate and measured. There was a calmness to his movements, an almost supernatural ease that Karax couldn't comprehend. "Why are you doing this?" Karax asked again, his voice hoarse but determined. "What do you want?" Still, the ninja didn't respond. He simply stood there, his presence almost suffocating, like a storm waiting to break. Karax's eyes narrowed. He wasn't going to die here. Not like this. Not to a shadow that refused to speak. He had come too far, and he still had a mission to complete. With a roar, Karax lunged forward, his weapon aimed directly at the ninja's chest. This was it. This would end the fight. He had to end it. He couldn't let this assassin defeat him. But the ninja was faster. In the blink of an eye, he sidestepped Karax's attack, his blade flashing in the moonlight. Karax barely had time to register the movement before the ninja's weapon was at his throat once more. Karax froze. This was it. He was done. But the ninja, instead of striking, gave him a slight push. Karax stumbled back, his weapon slipping from his grasp. The ninja watched him, waiting for him to recover. There was no mockery in the ninja's eyes, no arrogance, just cold, quiet precision. Karax gritted his teeth. He had been bested. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. The ninja wasn't here to kill him. He was here to prove a point. "You're not ready," the ninja finally said, his voice as calm and steady as ever. "The real battle is still to come." The words struck Karax harder than any blade ever could. The feeling of dread settled in his stomach, heavy and suffocating. And just as quickly as the ninja had appeared, he vanished again, disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Karax stood there, breathless and confused, the weight of the ninja's words pressing down on him. The mission wasn't over. This wasn't just about assassins and warriors. This was about something bigger, something far beyond his understanding. As the silence of the forest returned, Karax's mind raced. He wasn't sure what was coming next, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity's battle had just begun. Karax stood motionless, his breath shallow, his body trembling from the intense encounter. The forest around him was eerily quiet, almost as if it too were waiting for something to happen. He didn't dare move. His senses were on high alert, every fiber of his being expecting the ninja to return. But the deadly warrior had vanished into the shadows, leaving nothing but silence in his wake. The words from the ninja echoed in Karax's mind. The real battle is still to come. What did that mean? Karax had no answers. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He had been bested by an opponent he couldn't even understand. The ninja's movements, his strategy, his purpose, none of it made sense. But one thing was clear. This was no ordinary assassin. This was no ordinary mission. This was something much larger, something that Kurax wasn't prepared for. He bent down and picked up his fallen weapon, a cold metal weight in his hands. The mission had changed. The objective was no longer about eliminating a target. The stakes had been raised, and Kurax could feel it deep in his bones. The question now was, what was humanity's role in all of this? In that moment, Kurax realized that the galaxy was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The Empire had sent their best assassins to Earth, expecting an easy victory. They had underestimated humanity's potential, but more than that, they had underestimated the forces that were awakening on their planet. Kurax wasn't the only one who had felt the shift. The entire world was about to change. And the ninja, with his cryptic message, was only the beginning. He turned back to where his comrades had fallen. Their bodies were still lying among the trees, their lives snuffed out in an instant by an enemy they couldn't even see coming. Kurax clenched his fists, the anger bubbling up inside him. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. This was a war humanity hadn't chosen, but one they would be forced to fight. The sounds of footsteps broke through the silence. Kurax spun around, weapon raised, but it wasn't the ninja. It was his fellow soldiers, emerging from the dense foliage, their faces grim. "Captain Kurax," one of them said, his voice low. "What happened?" "We heard fighting." But he trailed off, eyes scanning the clearing where Kurax had faced the ninja. Kurax didn't know how to explain. How could he put into words what had just happened? How could he describe the feeling of being completely outmatched, of facing a warrior who moved like a shadow, who could disappear and reappear at will? "We were ambushed," Kurax said, his voice cold. "The ninja is gone, but this isn't over. We need to regroup. Something's coming." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to say. They had seen Kurax fight countless battles, but this was different. They had never seen him this shaken before. "Are we going to pursue?" one of them asked. Kurax shook his head. "No, the ninja wanted us to live. He's waiting for something bigger, something that's coming soon. We need to be ready." His word hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Kurax wasn't sure what they were up against, but he knew it was going to be far worse than anything they had ever faced. Back at the command center, the mood was tense. The news of the ninja's attack had already spread, and now Kurax had to report the unsettling truth. Humanity wasn't just facing an enemy. They were facing something much worse, something from the shadows, a force so deadly that even the Empire's finest couldn't overcome it. "Are you sure?" The commanding officer looked at Kurax with disbelief. "You're telling me we're dealing with a ninja, one person?" Kurax nodded. "He's not just a ninja. He's part of something bigger. The Empire sent their best, and we're still alive. But there's something else going on, something that's beyond our understanding." The officer stood up, pacing. "What do you suggest we do?" Kurax met his gaze. "We prepare. This battle isn't about fighting assassins. It's about surviving whatever's coming next, and we need to be ready for it." The officer fell silent for a moment, as if weighing Kurax's words. Then, without saying another word, he turned and issued orders to the staff. It was clear now that the mission had changed. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future. The shadows in the forest seemed to grow longer, darker. Something was watching, waiting, preparing. Kurax didn't know what it was, but he knew one thing. Humanity had a new kind of warrior. And this was just the beginning. Kurax could feel the weight of his next steps. The planet was changing, and so was the fight. The warriors of the Empire, the assassins sent to eliminate humanity, had underestimated Earth's resolve. They had not accounted for the warriors who fought in the shadows, warriors who had not been seen until now. And in that moment, Kurax realized that humanity wasn't just fighting to survive. It was fighting to make a stand, to show the galaxy that Earth was not a planet to be ignored or crushed. It was a planet of warriors, a planet with a strength that no one had seen before. And the ninja's message was clear. The battle was only beginning. As the stars shone overhead, Karax knew the war would come soon. It would come with a fury that even the Empire's finest could not predict, and humanity's warriors would be ready. Karax stood at the front of the command center, his hands resting on the map laid out before him. He was trying to make sense of it all. The sudden appearance of the ninja, the overwhelming power of humanity's foes, and the cryptic warning that had been left behind. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something much larger than a simple war, something that would alter the fate of the galaxy forever. The room around him was buzzing with activity. Soldiers moved swiftly, preparing for what was coming next. The air was thick with tension, and yet there was a sense of purpose. The battle for Earth had begun, but this wasn't just about defending a planet anymore. Humanity was about to prove something. They were about to show the galaxy what they were made of. "We need to rally the forces," Karax said, his voice steady and commanding. He turned to face his fellow officers, all of whom were looking at him with a mix of anticipation and concern. "The ninja didn't just attack us for no reason. We're part of something bigger. I don't know what it is yet, but we need every fighter we have." The officers nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Earth was no longer just a target. It was now a key player in a larger war. A war that had already begun in the shadows. The question was, how would humanity respond? Karax moved to the communication console and keyed in a sequence. A holographic map of Earth appeared, detailing the key strategic locations around the planet. It wasn't just Earth's defenders who needed to be rallied. Every corner of the globe had to be prepared for an oncoming invasion, and there were still countless cities and soldiers to mobilize. "We need the resistance," Karax said, his eyes scanning the map. "Not just the military. Every fighter who's ready. We need to come together as one." The hologram flickered, and the face of a woman appeared on the screen, a high-ranking general from Earth's resistance movement. Her face was stern, but there was a spark in her eyes. "You're right, Karax. We've been fighting in the shadows for too long. But this is different. We have to unite." "We have no choice," Karax replied, his voice hard. "The enemy is coming, and they're bringing more than just assassins. We've seen what one ninja can do. Imagine what they'll send next. We can't fight them alone." The general's gaze hardened. "I'll mobilize every cell. We'll take to the streets, the forests, and the mountains. Earth will not go down without a fight." As the connection ended, Karax felt a renewed sense of purpose. The resistance was growing stronger. The warriors were coming. Humanity would no longer stand idly by while the galaxy's threats descended upon them. Earth would fight. Earth would unite. Outside, the sky was darkening, and the stars above seemed to hold an ominous glow. Karax didn't know what lay ahead, but he could feel the war's weight pressing on him. He wasn't sure whether they would win or lose, but the fact remained. Humanity was no longer alone in this fight. They were going to give everything they had to protect their home, their families, their future. As the soldiers prepared for the upcoming battle, Karax took a moment to gather his thoughts. He thought of the ninja. He thought of the warning. The real battle is still to come. Those words echoed in his mind. What had they truly meant? What was the enemy waiting for? And why had they sent their deadliest warriors after Earth? So many questions, and so few answers. He turned his attention back to the mission at hand. They couldn't waste any more time on speculation. Every second mattered now. The fight was coming, and they needed every soldier, every fighter, every person who was willing to lay down their life for Earth. "Prepare yourselves," Karax spoke aloud to the gathered soldiers. "We're not just defending a planet anymore. We're defending our future. We are humanity's last stand, and we will not falter." The men and women around him nodded, a quiet but intense resolve filling the room. They knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about military strength. It was about the will to survive, to protect what was theirs, to fight for Earth in the face of overwhelming odds. The enemy had underestimated them once. It wouldn't happen again. Karax was sure of it. Humanity had something the rest of the galaxy couldn't understand: resilience, determination, and above all, the will to fight back. Karax looked toward the horizon, his eyes narrowing. The countdown to war had begun, and the universe was about to learn what it truly meant to face the might of humanity. The ninja had left his message, and now it was time to act on it. The battle was about to become much more than a fight for survival. It was a fight for freedom, for honor, and for the future of all humankind. And they would not back down. The war had just begun, and humanity would rise to meet it. The preparations were almost complete. The world was on the edge of something far greater than they had anticipated. In every corner of the earth, humanity was coming together. From the cities to the rural villages, every fighter, every defender was ready. It was no longer about survival. It was about proving that Earth would never bow to any galactic empire. Karax stood on the edge of the command center, looking out over the bustling base. The once calm and quiet atmosphere had been replaced with the hum of energy, the rapid steps of soldiers, and the sounds of vehicles powering up for battle. Humanity had been underestimated, and now they were about to show the galaxy the cost of that mistake. Outside, the sky was dark, and the air felt thick with anticipation. Ships were being loaded, weapons prepared, and strategies reviewed. The ninja had warned them. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. But now, it wasn't just about fighting for Earth. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Karax's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden flicker of a communication screen. It was a secure military channel. The face of General Lila appeared, her expression serious. "Karax, we've received new intel. The enemy is massing in orbit. They're sending more ships, larger ships, with better firepower," she said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "They're planning to assault Earth's atmosphere within the next few hours." Karax's heart raced. He had anticipated this. The Empire's initial underestimation of humanity's strength had been only the beginning. They would not just attack Earth. They were planning an all-out assault, trying to crush humanity's resistance in one swift strike. "We've seen their strength, General," Karax replied, his voice calm despite the fear that gripped him. "But we got something they didn't expect. Humanity's strength is in its unity. We're not just fighting with weapons, we're fighting with everything we are." The general nodded. "You're right. We've got allies, we've got fighters ready. We just need to hold them off long enough to launch our counterattack." Karax's gaze drifted toward the sky. It felt like the calm before the storm. Earth had always been a peaceful place, but now it was about to become the battleground for something far larger than anyone could have imagined. The enemy may have underestimated them, but they were about to see the true power of human resilience. "We'll be ready," Karax said. "Earth will not fall without a fight. We'll show them the strength of a planet that will never surrender." The communication ended, and the countdown began. The soldiers moved faster now, their every action purposeful and precise. The fleet had been mobilized, and the forces gathered were ready. The battle for Earth would soon begin. Karax moved down to the central command room, his mind racing. As he walked through the bustling base, he noticed the faces of the soldiers, some young, some old, all determined. Humanity had never faced a threat like this before, but they had something no other species had: the will to fight and survive. The screens in the command room flickered to life, showing real-time footage of the approaching enemy ships. The fleet was massive, more than Karax had ever seen. But despite the overwhelming numbers, he couldn't shake the feeling that the enemy had still failed to understand one critical thing about humanity. Humans never gave up. "Are we ready?" Karax asked, turning to the team of officers gathered around the central table. The room was filled with an air of focused determination. "We're ready, Karax," one of them replied. "We've got the fleet in position. The defenses are in place. Earth is as prepared as we can make it." Kurox took a deep breath. Then let's make sure the galaxy remembers the day humanity stood tall. As the final moments of preparation ticked by, Kurox stood at the front of the command center, looking out over the bustling war machines that were now ready for battle. He could hear the hum of energy in the air, the sound of humanity gearing up for what was going to be a brutal fight. The enemy might have thought they could crush them, but humanity had already made its decision. It would never give up. And now, with the world on the brink of battle, Earth was about to show the galaxy its true power. The fleet was ready. The fighters were prepared. The time for mercy was over. The time for humanity to fight back had arrived. As Kurox looked up at the sky, the first enemy ship broke through the clouds, darkening the sky with its massive size. But humanity was ready. And in that moment, Kurox knew that no matter what happened next, Earth's response would be a lesson the galaxy would never forget. Humanity's fight had just begun, and nothing would stop it now. The first enemy ship broke through Earth's atmosphere with a thunderous roar, its massive form casting a shadow over the land below. As it descended, the sight of its dark hull and countless weapons glinting in the sunlight struck terror into anyone who dared to look up. The galaxy had no idea what they had just provoked. The mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity, and now they would feel the consequences. From every corner of the world, humanity's forces sprang into action. The preparation, the training, the unity, it was all coming together now. Earth was ready to defend itself, and in this moment, humanity's strength was about to be fully revealed. Kurox, standing at the front of the command center, watched as the enemy ships lined up in the sky. Their fleet was vast, but something was different this time. The enemy was not used to facing a determined and united force. And this time, it was humanity who held the advantage. "We've got incoming. They're charging weapons," an officer shouted. Kurox's heart pounded in his chest as the countdown began. The time for waiting was over. Earth was about to show the galaxy the power of its defenders. He turned to his fellow officers, his voice low but resolute. "This is it. We've trained for this moment. We're going to make them regret ever underestimating us." The order was given, and the fleet launched into the air, soaring into the sky with a force that made the ground tremble beneath their feet. The air was filled with the sound of engines roaring to life, and the bright streaks of energy blasts as ships soared towards their enemies. Earth's Air Force, Space Fleet, and ground troops were all in motion, each working in perfect synchronization. From the ground below, a series of missiles shot into the air, arcing upwards toward the invading ships. Each missile carried a message that Earth would not go quietly. The first wave of enemy ships began to respond with their own deadly countermeasures, firing off blasts that filled the sky with flashes of light. Kurox watched the chaos unfold before him. He was proud of the way humanity had come together. But the real battle had yet to begin. The real weapon, the one they had all been waiting for, was still in the shadows. And then it appeared. From the clouds above, like a storm breaking free, the mothership descended. It was unlike anything the invaders had ever seen. Larger than any of their ships, its surface was covered in what appeared to be an endless array of weapons. But it was not just the size that shocked the enemies. It was the sheer power it radiated. It was a beacon of humanity's strength, a symbol of their refusal to surrender. As the massive vessel broke through the clouds and positioned itself at the front of the battlefield, a calm voice echoed through the command center. "Activate the mothership's main weapon." The tension in the room was palpable. Kurox's hands gripped the edge of the table, and for a brief moment, the entire room held its breath. The weapon, a massive cannon that spanned the length of the mothership, powered up with an ominous hum. And then, with a flash of bright blue light, the beam was unleashed. The beam shot forward with terrifying speed, piercing through the enemy ships with the force of 1,000 storms. It tore through the first few vessels like paper, cutting them in half with ease. The force of the attack rippled through the atmosphere, causing shockwaves that rattled everything in its wake. The enemy fleet, caught off guard by the sheer power of the attack, scrambled to retaliate. But it was too late. One by one, the invaders' ships were obliterated by the mothership's devastating firepower. The Galactic Empire's deadliest assassins, sent to bring about Earth's downfall, were now scrambling for survival. The enemies tried to regroup, but Earth's forces were relentless. As the mothership fired again, the remaining invaders' ships began to retreat, falling back as their forces crumbled. The energy on the battlefield was electric, and the sound of victory rang through the air. Kurok stood tall, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Earth had done it. They had turned the tables. The battle was not over, but the message was clear. The invaders had underestimated humanity's resolve. And now, they would pay the price. Victory, he whispered to himself. He could see it now, the enemy's fear as they realized just how much power humanity had. It wasn't just the size of their fleet or the might of their weapons. It was the strength of their unity, the fierce determination that no one would ever take away from them. As the remaining enemy ships retreated into the stars, the Earth's fleet continued to chase them, showing no mercy. The mothership's weapon had proven to be the game-changer, but humanity's true strength was in their hearts, in their will to protect their world. Kurok turned back toward the team. Prepare for the next phase. We've won the battle, but we still have to win the war. Humanity had struck back. They had proven that they were not to be underestimated. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and the Empire had felt the wrath of Earth. And as Kurok looked out over the battlefield, he knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The Galactic Empire had no idea what they had started.